Another Thursday night, getting closer to Christmas.
Yeah, I think some of these times I'm not sure if I see the chats or not, but
yeah. All right, we got some people filling into the room, so I'm going to announce you now, and we'll get started. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Pro Seller Talk. My name is John Bullard Sr. I am the host of this show, and I am proud to have with me today Brian R. Johnson. Brian is going to he has put together a presentation for you guys tonight on audience research using sponsored ads. He's got a nice slideshow that he's got prepared for you guys. I know that you guys will get a lot of value out of this. Take notes. Make sure you have plenty of questions for Brian. That's why he's here. He'd love to answer your questions while he's here. And again, I've got Brian Johnson. Hey, Brian, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're very welcome.
Sorry, just making getting a little more comfortable here. Okay, good to go. All right. So I guess, I mean, just starting out, kind of jumping in here. You think we've got enough audience to go ahead and just get into the presentation?
Yeah, I would go ahead and start the presentation, and you know where the share button is in the webinar?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So I just want to introduce myself then. So I'm Brian Johnson. I am primarily in the Amazon space right now. Number of years of experience. I had about 7 years selling on eBay and through other channels as far as my own e-commerce sites. For the last 3 years, I've been on Amazon, and I've gravitated to the point where not only do I have my own product lines that I sell on international Amazon marketplaces, but also focused primarily on the pay-per-click advertising on Amazon, including Amazon's sponsored product ads, as well as the AMS advertising. Go ahead and share my screen here. See that slide there. So I'm down in Austin, Texas. So it's a bit, it's still pretty comfortable here. We're not in the northern states where it's gotten a lot colder. If you need to reach me, I can be, my email is brian@ppcscope.com. Glad to help anybody who needs the help. All right. Here. All right. What I'm talking about is audience research using Amazon's sponsored ads. I'm not going to go into too much detail as far as the mechanics of setting up ads. That's kind of a much more deeper topic and a lot more boring topic. So, however, I do understand certainly that audience research using Amazon sponsored ads is still a boring topic to some. So I'll try to make it as least painful as possible, and power through it here and see, try to give you some good reasons actually as far as why to use the advertising, how to use the advertising in order to really affect sales on your Amazon business. This can apply to other channels, other types of internet marketing, other types of e-commerce, but I'm going to focus primarily just from the Amazon standpoint. So I don't have the actually I don't have visibility, John, as far as the chat room at the moment. But let me. I'm
going to be monitoring anyway, Brian. I'm on mute, but I'm going to be monitoring it. And when I see things come up, I'll inform you and let you know.
Okay, so I just went ahead and shrunk the screen down a little bit here so I could see your comment out to the audience. So I did want to ask as far as just kind of polling the audience as far as who's doing like wholesale products, who's doing private label, who's doing off Amazon. Maybe just kind of give me some feedback as far as a 1 for wholesale, 2 for private label, or 3 for off Amazon. That'll kind of give me a little bit better feel for who's in the house. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in here then. So I'm going to open with a statement that some may object to a little bit, but sponsored ads or the pay-per-click advertising on Amazon is not for sales. And at least I say that initially it's not for sales. So the reason for that is because the Amazon's marketplace is maturing. So what we generally want on Amazon, as far as our advertising, what we expect of the Amazon advertising is we want an easy button. We want to be able to just turn on our advertising and let it run, and it just makes us money. In fact, we want to make it so much money that is actually profitable so that we can put in $1 and we can get $5 back. That's kind of the dream that we would have as far as what advertising is going to do for us. And certainly anybody who is selling on Amazon is going to want their their bestseller ranking or their sales to be directly impacted by the advertising that they're doing. And so what we want is typically increased sales that results in increased search position for our product on Amazon. There's a reality to this, however. Certainly this year we've seen a lot more change in the Amazon platform. Sellers have become more desperate for a competitive edge as more and more sellers pour into the sales channel that is Amazon. And we're seeing a lot more where following along with what they hear in a podcast or in a chat room or in a, in a Facebook group, for instance, and they're believing everything somebody tells them this is how it works. And most of the time it's because it may used to have worked. That sounds good in theory, but it doesn't actually apply currently because the marketplace, the channel, continues to adapt. It continues to evolve. It gets more and more competitive, but not to the point where I would say, oh, Amazon has changed so much that you need to get out. It's still a huge opportunity. It's a huge amount of money that we're making on Amazon across the board, across a lot of sellers. There's still a lot of opportunity available here. It just doesn't follow the same rules that it did 2 years ago. And so a lot of people are getting confused by it. They're getting more desperate to try to get the exposure for the products they have. They're trying to get their money out of and as John and I were just talking about, is a lot of us loaded up with a lot more inventory, expecting to have the same kind of sales we did last year. And then we ended up with a compressed selling season this year, perhaps due to politics, perhaps due to seasonal variances, perhaps due to competition and other sales channels. But at the same time, continues to show that they're struggling to keep up with the amount of turnover of product. They can't be struggling with the size that they are. They can't be struggling with growth problems if the platform is not growing. So the platform is definitely growing. Yes, we've got more products. We've got more sellers. But at the same time, we simply just need to adapt our strategies and let go of some of the strategies that worked 2 years ago and really understand as far as how do we really, put some effort into this to really and be able to sell directly to the audience that actually is going to buy our product. This applies to any e-commerce platform. My examples are going to show as far as Amazon, but it does apply to any sales channel. So one of the things that we're seeing, we've seen this on other pay-per-click platforms as well, but sellers are willing to overspend on pay-per-click in order to achieve sales. Most of the time, most sellers don't understand their numbers. They don't understand their break even, how much they can spend in order to still profit on their sales because they haven't gone through a full fiscal year and calculated the total cost of doing business, the cost of sourcing, the cost of selling, the cost of maintaining their infrastructure, their accounting, their taxes. And so a lot of them are willing, and this is the same thing I saw on eBay and we'll see on any sales channel, is the inexperienced seller willing to overspend in order to achieve the sales with the, some may call it a delusion. Others may just say it's kind of a misguided effort, or even desperation, that they're simply just trying to sell units, and they equate that to when the year end comes, they finally work out the numbers and they find out that they've been working for $3 an hour across the whole year, and they've got to reset and rethink. It's like, okay, is this really what's going to work for me? But as sellers of multiple product lines, we might be competing against these sellers that don't understand the numbers. They're willing to sell for less. They're willing to spend more on their advertising and willing to invest, or I shouldn't say invest, but willing to spend more money on outside services for that quick fix. Lastly, Amazon also, I shouldn't say lastly, but the other reality is that Amazon does profit from the pay-per-click advertising, as does any other pay-per-click platform. We see just recently, of course, going into the holiday season, Amazon sends out an email to all their advertisers and says, hey, coming up, if you really want to boost your sales, we see the ads within Seller Central. We see the emails that go out. Amazon will come out and say, hey, you should really increase your bids on sponsored products. You should budget by 50%. And while that is true, in order to keep up with those other sellers that are overspending and increasing their bids, they're also reacting to the fact that Amazon sent that out, and they see their ad position slipping. Maybe they don't see the sales they expected. They didn't get the sales numbers that they were expecting during Cyber Monday. And so they're continually increasing their bid. In fact, one of the things that we see, we've been tracking this for 2.5 years now, and we see an average advertising spend increase, usually conservatively about 10% month over month. 10% month over month is significant, especially when we start getting into the bigger cost per click bids that sellers are willing to pay in order to be in a high visibility position. In fact, one of the things that we're seeing, of course, is that in December, we're seeing a significant jump, especially after Amazon rolls out the policy saying, hey, you can't incentivize reviews. A lot of sellers made the mistake of thinking that means that they can't do any product promotion. They can't do any giveaways. No, it just means that you can't trade it for a review. And all the podcasts and all the Facebook groups ran around, and all the seller forums ran around. They said, oh, well, the only other thing you can do is you can just do pay-per-click advertising. So everybody rushes over to sponsored ads or AMS ads, and they start dumping money in there saying, I got to get my reviews back. Only to find out that doesn't actually work. Yeah, you can get more sales, but you're spending way more on ads than the amount of new reviews that they're getting, because they didn't take the time to work on another aspect as far as how do they actually ask for the review? How do they communicate with the buyer to get them, to encourage them to leave an honest review, regardless of the incentive, just in order to ask for the review? They're forgetting to ask for the review. And that's the biggest mistake that I see a lot of sellers making as a result of the policy changes regarding incentivized reviews. So they rush out to the Amazon sponsored advertising and they start spending more money. So what does Amazon do next? Amazon rolls out a new feature into the new campaign manager in Seller Central called suggested bids. Previously, that was called estimated page one bid. The idea was that if you bid the value that we're suggesting, that your ad is going to show up on page one. I've always been critical of that one because it was usually very inaccurate. I've been a strong opponent to it because as far as using it. Amazon decided to roll out the new suggested bid, which included an update as far as the minimum bid that it would take to get onto page one it's more accurate now. It's not perfect, but it's more accurate than the previous estimated page one bid. And they also show you the bid that it would likely take you in order to achieve the number one ad position. I don't ever recommend being in the number one ad position. It's significantly more expensive than the number two position. And yet a lot of sellers, they believe it's like, well, if I'm in number one ad position, I'll get the most amount of sales. They're using the same logic with organics or on advertising that they would on organic sales, where if I'm in the number one position, I'm going to sell the most amount of product. Well, on advertising, you're simply just going to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 times the amount of other positions that are nearby as far as sponsored ads. So one of the things that we're observing, because I've got a consulting agency and we work with a number of clients. We also have a software that is very popular for optimizing and analyzing Amazon pay-per-click advertising. We get to see a lot of metrics. And one of the things that we're seeing is, especially with the suggested bids that Amazon is coming in, we're starting to see sellers, the reality of what sellers are doing is, in order to maintain that number one position, they're willing to pay amounts just to ensure that they always have the number one position. We've seen bids. Last week, I thought the highest bid that I saw for a number one position was $85 per click. Well, that's not shocking for AdWords or for Facebook. It certainly is from a sponsored ads standpoint on Amazon. This week, it was pointed out to me by one of the members in my Facebook group, saw a bid of $1,000, which I think is the maximum that you can actually bid upon in sponsored ads. But somebody was willing to bid the maximum in order to maintain that number one position, spending huge amounts of money. Now, if anybody ever challenged them, most likely they're never actually spending the $1,000. They're only spending the $85 because most other sellers that they're competing against are never going to, in order to push that limit up. However, in December, what we're finding is a lot of us, we may have our default bids set up in our ad campaigns. We have it maybe set so we're going to spend a maximum of $2 per click. And we've never had to pay that much the rest of the year. We've only had to pay like maybe 85 cents per click. But as a result of the competition and the desperation that's occurring during December, we get a lot of the bidding that's going up and up and up. And so now we're actually starting to realize that the $2 maximum bid that we set is actually getting closer and closer to being met. And so we're seeing where some keywords are going well beyond what we would normally say our maximum bid is, and we're losing out on some of that visibility. But then we're also paying 2-3 times as much as we are used to paying, and not being aware of what your actual profit margin is and the metrics, basically the accounting of and the profitability of your business. It can get away from you pretty quick if you're not paying attention. So what I'm going to recommend, new approach, as far as what I would consider to be the approach that I would suggest, comes to sponsored ads. It's getting more expensive. What do we do instead? The first thing I would say, the first goal, and this ties back to the statement of sponsored ads, at least not initially, is because our number one goal is going to be to position our product in the search results for organic sales. We don't necessarily want to run the advertising. We don't want to spend the money on the advertising for the sake of advertising and visibility. What we want is the result. What we believe is that we can turn on advertising and we can reach a high position, a page one position, organically, so that as a result of that organic position, that we'll get more sales from the natural search results from the organic sales that'll outweigh the costs of our advertising. But our advertising is skyrocketing this month. It'll go back down after December, but right now it's getting insane. So one of the things that I consistently teach, and I'm getting more emphatic in my teaching now of this, is our first goal is not to simply sell product. First of all, because most product listings are not going to be affected organically by the additional sales created through advertising. It's a common myth that gets spread around and commonly is stated in podcasts and, you know, training materials and Facebook groups and forums. But the reality, and we see thousands of accounts, the reality is that the Amazon advertising only accounts for about 15 to 20% of additional sales of a product line. Now, in some situations, that can make a difference. That can increase your organic search result position as far as where you show up for certain keywords, a few positions, maybe even a full page. But is it going to carry you from page 5 to page 1? No, it's not going to do it, just because it doesn't make enough of an impact. It'd be better if we focused in on the 80-20. So if 20% of our sales come from the advertising, then the other 80% is coming from our organic sales. So really, we need to be focusing more on achieving a higher search position with that 80%. But how do we do that? If we've done our research, a lot of us maybe have started out using things like Jungle Scout as an example. And we pick up on a keyword that seems to be in every single title that we see for a product like the one we're selling. And because we're sourcing products based off of opportunity, we don't necessarily know the audience. We don't necessarily know all the terminology that they might use. And so we're guessing. And we're trying to pick out keywords and search terms. And we're using tools like Jungle Scout and Unicorn Smasher and some of these other research tools that tell us, oh, if you're on page 1 for this keyword, then your product will sell, $1 million a month, whatever. The reality is that most of those products that are on page 1 for that one keyword are on page 1 and page 2 for dozens, if not hundreds, of different keywords that contribute to their BSR ranking, that contribute to the monthly sales that we observe. But oftentimes we're too lazy. I know I am. I look at one keyword and say, hey, that's golden. Okay, maybe I'll go the extra effort. I'll check 2 or 3 keywords just to make sure. 3 keywords out of hundreds that I'm willing to check using something like a, Unicorn Smasher in order to check the sales of page 1. Is that really effective? Turns out it's not, because we spend so much time setting up our listings and the content, and we go after, we think that we're going to try to get on to page 1 for a keyword simply by putting it into our title. In some cases, we never make it to page 10 because we don't have the sales velocity. You don't have the unit sales in order to push our listing forward for that particular keyword. Or we do reach page 1 and the organic sales don't show up. What happened to the organic sales that I was expecting for this keyword? Is that, I don't understand why everybody else is selling so well and I'm not selling well. I'm on page 1. The reality starts sinking in is that, well, maybe we picked the wrong keyword. Maybe the keyword that I thought everybody was converting on doesn't actually convert for my product. It may convert for theirs, but it may not convert for my product. So what I teach is the number one goal that we can use sponsored products advertising or any pay-per-click advertising is market research. Get your ad in front of an audience. Determine if they're interested in the product based off your advertisement. Interested, find out if they're willing to convert to a sale for your product. And then once the pattern starts developing where you have 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 orders as a result of a keyword that you can observe and you can track in pay-per-click advertising, now you know the keywords. Now you know your top 5 search terms that actually convert for your specific product. Now go back and do your keyword research based off of what you know actually converts for your product, and you'll find a different story. In some of those keywords, you're going to have too much competition. You're going to walk in there, there's 50,000, 100,000. I've seen 1 million Amazon for certain high competition keywords. The chance of you getting to first page compared to those who are willing to lose a lot more money than maybe you're willing to do. If you have a selection, if you've been running your advertising and optimizing your advertising and really ad in front of thousands, or in front of audiences, or in front of shoppers for thousands of different keywords, which is what it takes, find 5 to 10 search terms, draw the traffic, draw the shoppers in to your listing, and actually convert. So what I like to do is I like to try to find 3 to 5 of those search terms that I know convert well to for my product. And I'll go back out to Amazon and I'll find out, and I'll search each one of those on Amazon. And I'll find out how many competing listings there are. How bad is the competition? Also, for situations where, first of all, the keywords are, the search terms are in, show up as far as a relevant, how do I put this? They're in front of relevant subcategories for which my product is in. You know, if I sell in, if I've got a product in sports and outdoors, and the keyword that converts best for my product turns out to be health and household, Amazon sees that. Amazon is less willing to show our product in organic search results or show our ad in advertising if there's a disconnect between where our product resides, as far as what subcategory we're in, the terminology that our audience who's buying our product is actually using in order to find and buy our product. Is we can test out these different, you know, you can get this information in a couple of weeks. Sometimes it takes a couple of months. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Depends on how much of a small niche that your product might be in. Out of curiosity, as far as those who are on, put a 1 in the chat if you're currently advertising on Amazon. So the goal of positioning a product in the search results for organic sales is based off of our research that we do in our sponsored ad advertising, or to find out which search terms that our audience is actually using to both find our product and to convert to our product. Then we can take those search terms back. We can search on Amazon and find out how many results are we competing against? How many other listings does Amazon consider relevant for the search term we're trying to target? If it's a reasonable amount, you know, that's kind of going to be subjective because some products are more competitive than others. And you can identify, as far as I'm looking for, a combination of which search terms have a decent amount of search volume, have the least amount of competition that I can find, and yet convert the highest for my product, or one of the highest for my product. So I'm not always going after the search term that's the most competitive. I'm trying to find a specific pocket, a specific niche that I can fit my product in, that I can get to page 1, page 2 organically, so that now I can actually get the organic sales for search terms that I know convert to a sale. Organic sales are 80% of your sales compared to the 20%. So the investment in the advertising is not to get the unit sales by itself. It's to get the intelligence about who your audience is and the terminology that they're using in order to find your product. You can position your product. You can update the content of your product listing. I would recommend from an advertising standpoint, it's primarily going to rely on title, bullets, and description. From an organic standpoint, it's going to rely primarily on the title and the back-end search term fields. The second goal that I have with advertising is, now that we've figured out who our audience is, which search terms can we update the content for our product listing in order to get the highest organic position that we can possibly manage now that we know what actually converts for our product. Then we can come back to our advertising and say, okay, let me see if I can get a break even. So I'm not losing money on my advertising. My product's headed toward a better position organically. Let me get my advertising under control now that I've got this information out of my target audience. The second goal is to bring it down to a break-even profit on my advertising. That's going to require optimization. Focus, first of all, on your search terms, because the search terms contribute to the performance of the keywords. Too many people try to fix their keywords by bidding differently or pausing keywords. But if you use things like the negative exact match feature on Amazon, and there's a similar feature on any pay-per-click platform, where you're blocking the specific search terms from showing on those that are unprofitable, then you can reduce your wasted ad spend on those search terms that aren't performing very well. And therefore, that increases the performance of the keyword that those search terms are matched up to. Just to clarify on that, the search term is what the shopper uses. That's what the shopper uses in what they search on Amazon in order to find products. The keywords are what we use on the advertising side to say, here's Amazon, here's the keywords that I want my ad to show for. So our second goal then, of course, is to maintain the sales velocity that we have, as far as even that 15 to 20% sales that we get through advertising still is going to have a benefit. It's going to help us to climb, especially when we're focusing on getting the sales, more and more sales on those search terms that we know actually convert for our product. That's going to drive targeted search term results on our organic listing. And then, of course, the third one is get profitable in the advertising. Continue to work the optimization, continue to focus in on that audience that we know converts profitably, and get it to the point where we're actually making more money on our advertising. So that'd be our third goal. So it seems a little bit counterintuitive to some. Again, the first goal, get our product positioned in the search results for organic based off of those keywords that we know convert well. Second is to get to a break-even point on our advertising. So at least we're not losing money on our advertising, but it's still giving us value as far as additional audience research, as well as some sales velocity for our product. Sales velocity as far as the number of units of product that we're selling on Amazon. And then third, working it into where we're actually profitable. So the final thing I'm going to wrap up here with, talking about the sales funnel. Much like a lot of other platforms and systems, there's usually a sales funnel involved as far as attracting the audience, showing them the offer, and getting them to convert to the offer. That's a very basic version of a sales funnel. Obviously, there's a lot more complex sales funnels that are available that are more effective. But just from a very simplistic standpoint, we attract, or we get our ad in front of an audience. And actually, we do that by on Amazon through the ad impressions. Typically the same terminology as far as any pay-per-click advertising platform. But the first piece of this is to get the ads in front of the shopper, and ideally in front of the audience that we already know or have identified as being ones that have value to us. They're actually going to convert. So in sponsored ads advertising, it's about getting more impressions. One of the biggest things that holds back in their advertising is they can't get Amazon to show their ad for certain target keywords either well enough or not at all. Usually that comes down to a conflict with how Amazon sponsored products algorithm works. It's their ad auction. They've got quality scores, a lot similar to other PPC platforms. They have quality scores. They have algorithms that calculate whether or not your ad should show, whether or not it qualifies, whether or not you've got content relevance, which is the big whether or not your keyword within your advertisement gets an impression is whether or not Amazon considers the content of your listing, primarily the front end content, bullets, description is an example, is actually matching up to the keyword you're trying to bid on before they show it to a shopper who's searching for that search term. So the impressions is just, the ad impressions is simply just us getting our product advertisement in front of the shopper. That's the first step. The second step is going to be to attract the shopper to come visit our listing. Off Amazon, call it a landing page. You know, as far as our product detail page, is our product offering page. At this point, we're just trying to, our ad is showing. Now we need to actually get a shopper to see our ad, consider the information that they have available about your product, and then decide, yep, that's what I'm looking for. I want to know more. The click-through rate is the first metric that I or my team look at when we're evaluating how well a campaign, an ad campaign is running. The click-through rate is usually going to be affected primarily by competitive selection. So in other words, if you're selling a product that has a lot of different design variations, there's just a ton of selection. If you've got an ad that is showing for a term like Christmas gifts on Amazon, Christmas gifts probably has at least 1 million search results that come back. And so there's no way that you can possibly be really targeting a specific audience on just through your ad. Click-through rate, or the number of times that shoppers see your ad and decide to click on your ad in order to visit your product detail page, is going to be affected significantly by how relevant that they consider it for. There's other things, including the photo, a title. An ad title can be as long as what we see in an organic search result, typically, maybe 110, 120 characters long. Other times, if it's on mobile or the right rail, those right side vertical ads, those might be as little as 30. And so there's very limited information that we put, that we give to a shopper to say, hey, this is my product and you really need to click on my ad, instead of going to all the other ads or all the other organic search results that are available. And so that first 30 characters is an example you don't want to waste with terms such as some brand name that nobody's ever heard of or would ever search for. While Amazon wants you to have a format as far as to lead, some categories that actually enforce a format as far as leading your product title with your brand name, followed by the product name and product, essentials. It doesn't benefit us as sellers if nobody knows what that product name or that brand is. It simply just takes up valuable real estate that we really need for more critical terms, whether that's the terms that the shopper is looking for or something that's compelling that is your unique selling proposition for your product that you need to stand out to grab their attention in the split second of their attention that you might catch. So the click-through rate, having a very low click-through rate in Amazon advertising, if you've got a click-through rate or a CTR below, like say 0.2%, like if you're down in the 0.1% or 0.2%, you've lost your audience. You don't have their attention. You've lost them before they even got to your product detail page. Most typical reasons are your image, the limited title that they might see, the price of the product, which Amazon shows to them, and the reviews. If you've got a product that you're advertising that has below 4 stars in reviews, you're likely to get passed over by most shoppers. Once they get to your product listing, now we actually need to convince them that this is the product that they're looking for. And what we're going to look at next is the conversion rate. Once they're on the product listing, are they going to buy or not? That's our conversion rate. And that can be referred to as CVR or CR, depends on which accounting school that you went to. But the ultimate rule on this is that we're no longer trying to attract the shopper because we've actually got them to our product detail page. Now we're just trying not to scare them away. And the biggest two things that we see, and you see this in other e-commerce, is the biggest two things that cause people to leave an offer is confusion or doubt. Conflicting information within a listing that conflicts against what they had in their mind as far as what they were searching for. You may not have any control or awareness as far as what that is. But if somebody is looking for a blue widget and they come out to your listing thinking they're going to get a blue widget and you only offer red and green, that's enough for them to move on and look for a blue widget. Now you may come out and say, like, look, this is a really good looking red widget, and it may still convince them, even though they were searching for something else. But confusion or doubt can be included as far as certainly product reviews, certainly recent product reviews. Anybody who's sold on Amazon for any length of time has gotten the 1-star reviews and seen where until you can bury that 1-star review, your conversion rate goes down. That's a shopper having confusion or doubt about whether or not your product really is the best choice for them. Oftentimes we see very low conversion rates for products that have a lot of style or selection or fit or pattern. With clothing, with artistic, things that have artistic design, cell phone cases, shoelaces, leather jackets, whatever the case is. When there's a lot more style selection, they have to think about, is this the style, the pattern, the color that I want or that I want to buy for somebody else if it's a gift? The longer that they have to question whether or not your product is right for them, the more doubt creeps in. The more they start looking around, they start seeing the other ads that are on your product listing, because Amazon makes sure that ads are all over the place. Some common things that I see that impact conversion rate the most is bad English. If you're selling to an English marketplace, make sure that your English is correct. Make sure that you're cleaning up your spelling, making sure that you're using good quality English. If you're not a native English speaker, you quality check your listing. People get turned off by grammatical errors. I'm just saying your conversion rate is getting affected by those things. Make sure the other images that you're putting up there, you've got enough images in order to answer other questions that your content may never be able to answer, or they may be too lazy to read your description. You've got succinct and targeted bullet points, making sure that you're using the full description field to the best of your advantage to state as far as like why what you have is better than others. If you're copying and pasting metrics from a catalog or from a manufacturer's spec sheet, you're taking unless they specifically look for things like, oh, it has to be at least a 50 decibel, speaker cone, those kind of things. If you don't have that kind of information and that your audience normally looks for those kinds of specifics, you better have it in there. If it's made in the USA, make sure it's made in the USA. Otherwise, they're going to assume that it's made in another country. If it's made by hand, make sure you mention that it's made by hand prominently, more than once if necessary. Don't be afraid to go out and ask some of your shoppers, say, look, what was it about my product liked that actually made the difference? Why didn't you choose somebody else's product? Don't be afraid to interview your audience to find out what areas of your content that you need to emphasize and which ones you need to de-emphasize. Reduce the confusion, reduce the doubt. Your conversion rates will increase over time as you get better and better at it. Being willing to go out and do the work as far as interviewing shoppers as an example, interviewing buyers rather, because most other sellers aren't willing to do that. Even if you need to hire a VA for $5 an hour out of the Philippines to do it, consider it. Don't put it on somebody else in order to create the copywriting for your listing. Learn who your audience is. See which search terms that they're using in the advertising that is working, that is drawing in the audience, that's converting for your product. Focus your product listing on that audience. Pay attention to the search terms that are getting the conversions. That's your audience telling you who they are. Listen to them. That's it. That is my presentation.
Hey, Brian, a lot of good information, especially on the spelling and stuff like that with your listings, and making sure they get the proper English in there so that, you know, Amazon can go in there and find you in the search results. And also the other things you were talking about is, it's interesting, like, right, that certain keywords seem to get searched a heck of a lot more than some others, and trying to compete with them. And I found that in fourth quarter with our advertising that my son does is more expensive in fourth quarter, because Amazon did send out that blast of, hey guys, spend 50 more, get more visibility. Well, everybody and their brother saw that and is doing that, and it ran up those pay-per-click campaigns a lot higher than what they normally are. Scared to spend those extras to be able to get those sales, and you don't have that built into your structure, your profit structure. You're right, you can get lost in the shuffle real quick, and to the point where you're breaking even or even losing money, and you're not realizing it because you're not paying attention.
Right. I see a couple of the questions coming in here. You want to just go ahead and jump in and start answering a couple of these?
Yeah, Dennis says, question, do you use in your ads?
Thousands. I'm not afraid to go to, I'll start out with at least 1,000. I'm not afraid to go 5,000, 10,000 if I need to. Usually that's a little excessive, because that actually used to be more effective, in that Amazon used to be a lot more generous as far as when they would match up your ad with the keywords that you're bidding on. As Amazon each month over month, Amazon continues to tighten up the relevance criteria. So fewer and fewer keywords are being matched up and actually shown. And that's typically based on the content that you have in your listing. The problem is that we don't know are actually going to work yet. That's why we have to test a lot. An automatic campaign, for instance, is not going to do the keyword research for us. It's a very inefficient way to do keyword research. Most sellers, most of your competitors are relying on an automatic campaign to do the work for them. And it's easy to beat out people who stop there.
All right. So I have a question before we get to the next question. You say that you're testing out thousands of keywords. What are you bidding on these keywords? Do you have a certain of a bid that you bid on the keywords?
So generally what I'll do is I'll first do a test, and to probably clarify a question, is that I'm not saying not to run an automatic campaign. I just use an automatic campaign differently than most. The reason I start out with an automatic campaign with a very high bid to me is $5. Although during the month of December, $5 is not that big. But normally I'll run like a $5 bid automatic campaign for just one day, 24 hours. And what I do with that is I figure out what's the average bidding range, the low to the high, as far as most search terms that are being shown in the automatic campaign. It gives me a better idea as far as, for my product niche, what's the range that I should expect to be paying. Ultimately, you're going to have to take this back and make it, it's a bit subjective, in that you're going to have to start somewhere. So maybe what I'll do is I'll start out a manual campaign with multiple ad groups, and those ad groups I'll have default, maybe I'll have a default bid of like say $2, and I'll test it for a while, test it for a couple of weeks just to see where I'm at. And it's usually enough where I can find out as far as where some of the keywords that are coming in, that are getting clicks, that are getting conversions, usually come in, below that. Now, if you know that you're in a very competitive, if you're selling pet products or, pet supplies, or if you're selling supplements, or if you're in beauty, $2 is not going to be enough. You kind of need to look as far as the competition level of the category that you're in as well, because those three categories are typically going to be $3 to $5 on average. Probably, well, I should say maybe $2.50 to $5 on average for some of those, which is not usually sustainable. But if we use it from a standpoint of we're trying to just understand who our audience is and the search terms they're using, temporarily, it's worth investing that money in order to find out what the search terms are and then get out of those more expensive ones, or reduce your bid down on those later on. So if you start out a campaign with a default ad group bid of say $2, and you find out that you've got some keywords that are converting that are $3, you may still need to bring that down in order to get it within profitability, but you've learned by maybe spending, having a higher bid, or maybe you're getting keywords that are hitting $2 every time. Those particular keywords you may have to increase in order to find out what the ceiling is or what the average is. I'm in under that. And then I'll adjust each keywords over time based off of optimization of search terms and of keywords.
All right, we have another question from Dennis. He says, are you targeting broad phrase or exact? It's a good question.
Yeah, so typically what I do, and I've got a little more kind of a complex one. I won't go into too much detail here on this, but typically what I'll do is, actually that's one of those slides that I was telling you about, John, is assuming my screen is showing here. This is actually a basic campaign structure that I'll start out with, including that auto campaign, which I call the discovery campaign, just in order to see what the bidding range is essentially, and identify some high value terms initially. And then I'll set up a research campaign, which is where I do a lot of my bulk keyword research, where I'm testing hundreds of thousands, several thousand keywords if necessary. And typically I'll start out with just broad match and phrase match. It used to be we could get away with just broad match. In June, they made an algorithm update where they put more emphasis on phrase match. So you get more ad impressions typically with phrase match keywords. But I like to do at a minimum phrase match, but I'll do broad and phrase match for sure. And then I typically reserve exact match for my final or my primary campaign where I have converting, but I'll test all three match types for each of the keywords that I'm seeing as have potential for conversion or are converting. I'll test all three match types because I don't know which match type is best suited for each keyword. There's no one best match type, in other words.
Yeah, I know my son does that too. He tests all three, the broad, the phrase, or the exact, because some actually perform better than others, and some surprise you the way they perform too. You would think that in one ad campaign is going to actually do better as a broad match than actually a phrase match, and you find out the opposite. So that's why you have to keep testing them and see what actually is working.
Part of this has to do with it. One of the methods that I see passed around quite a bit is to progress from broad match first, and if it's converting, then move it up to phrase, and then it's converting, move it from phrase and up to exact, and basically leaving the old one behind. So they're only in one match type at a time. Ultimately, they take it up to exact match, and then they leave it there. Is actually an AdWords, like a Google AdWords strategy that doesn't actually work very well on Amazon. But I certainly understand why a lot of people come in with the experience of AdWords and why they try it. But we've certainly tested this enough to know that it's pretty rare that actually is going to be as effective as simply just testing all 3 match types and then staying with the match type or match types that perform well.
All right. Ada has a little bit different question. She says, you are asking customers who purchase from MF.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's MF or FBA, you know, if I have some kind of a contact point with them, you know, just as a follow-up, I can certainly ask them, you know, certainly with Merchant Fulfilled, I'm going to have more information than if I was through FBA, but I can still do it through FBA where I'm simply just saying, hey, you know, I want to get some feedback. Would you mind sharing your experience as far as why you chose us over others? That's perfectly well within the terms of service of Amazon. You're not taking them off Amazon. You're not incentivizing them to do anything. You're simply just asking for their honest opinion based on their experience as far as why your product stood out in their search compared to others.
Trying to see if we have any more questions. I just posted to see if there's any more questions. I think that you fill their heads with a lot of information, and sometimes it's information overload, and they're just kind of in one of those patterns where it's like, okay, too much to absorb all for one night.
Sure.
To a lot of conferences, and I try to tell people that, you know, in the conferences, although the speakers are great, especially in the Amazon venue,
Mm-hmm.
the audience and networking, you get a lot more out of networking, I feel, being in those conferences. You know, not that the speakers aren't great and they have good information, but man, you can really start to build your business when you start networking with others that are actually attending those conferences.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of funny actually. In the last in October, I was speaking briefly at Amazing Summit here in Austin, Texas, and you know, most of the time I go there so that I can network with other, you know, other for that. What I was actually talking about as far as our software package, but you know, being able to network with other software developers as well as other speakers that were there. And what was funny is that I would, you know, leave the conference and go across the street to kind of get away from the crowd to go get a coffee, and I get chased down to ask questions. But initially, where I was kind of like, oh man, I'm just trying to get a coffee, I'm trying to get quiet, you know, you're chasing me down. When I got down and actually, you know, I sat down with each one of them, and I'd sit there for, you know, half an hour and talk with them. And those are some of the best connections that I made, because those are the people that are willing to do what it takes, really willing to go after the information, try to make the connections, get their questions answered, not simply just listen to, you know, a training video or follow a checklist. They strive for the information that they need for their business. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, that's why I go to conferences, and I tell people, you know what, you know, you look at the price for the conference, but really out of the equation, and you add in the equation of the value and what you're going to learn and benefit from just being in that audience. But having said that, you know as well as I do that you can't just sit in the audience and just be there. You gotta be, you know, mingling and wanting to socialize with other people. And if you're willing to do that and share and listen to other people's stories, and or that you probably never dreamed that would open up while you were, you know, have to go there.
Right. Yep, exactly.
All right. So Brian, we're going on about an hour now. I appreciate you being here. For the people that are here and that are going to listen to the replay, how can they get in touch with you, other than, I know in the beginning that you put it out there, but for anyone that may have came in a little bit later, how can they reach you, and if answered or they want to follow you, how do they get a hold of you?
So yeah, so I'm in a couple of different places. So I don't know if you want to just kind of show the title, because I know that you've got, you know, you've got like a special link for like sponsor products and the PPC scope software and everything. So
yeah,
but I'm in a few different areas. Okay, so you'll go ahead and add that on there then for them.
Yeah,
okay, cool. Because I know that's a better offer than what other people would get. So in my space, because I specialize with Amazon and the sponsored products advertising, the AMS advertising. So I have, we have our own software package called PPC Scope. We're on our second generation now. We've second year on that. We're actually getting ready for a new, very cool update coming up here in first quarter. And super secret. And then, of course, I have my full training academy, which is the Sponsored Products Academy, which is started out. It's about, I don't know, 15 to 20 hours of video training on sponsored products. So there's a lot more detail that we can get into. I do have a consulting agency for advertising, and then the Facebook group. The Facebook group on Amazon is called, the Facebook group is called Amazon PPC Troubleshooting. We've got a lively crowd in there, so it's a good place if you are running sponsored ads or just getting started and you've got some questions, need some basic strategy guides, any of that type of thing. It's all free. I'm in there on a regular basis giving feedback and helping people, as well as a lot of the whole community is. The Amazon PPC Troubleshooting group on Facebook is a pretty good resource.
I'm posting that right now. You're actually, and guys, there's no obligation to this. Brian basically came on today to supply us with a lot of information about sponsored ads and how you can do things a little bit different. He's an expert in this field, and he just felt like he wanted to put something together. That only for this webinar. So we did decide that we were going to do that for you guys, and if it's something, if you're interested, fine. If you're not, that's okay too. And you can just click on this link and you'll be able to go there and see the offer and see if it's for you. Sponsored ads is not something that the beginner should be doing. I mean, it's something that
it does. Yeah, it actually starts out like the whole first week is just like introduction, terminology and how the basic sponsored system works. And it carries on through the training. It evolves into the intermediate and the advanced level training. So it's quite the range.
Hey, Brian, it's been a pleasure having you here. And for the ones that are on this webinar and listening, I know you could be doing other things, and we do appreciate you spending your time with me and Brian tonight and all the information that Brian's been able to provide for us. Again, we know that you could be, there's a lot of webinars out there that you could be listening to, and the fact that you took time out to listen to this tells us that you're at least somewhat serious about wanting to your chances of being able to sell your products on Amazon and through sponsored ads and the things that Brian taught tonight. If you apply some of these things, you should be able to at least get yourself in better position for products. But like I was saying in the beginning, it's not something for a beginner, because you do have to do a lot of keyword research, a lot of testing, and it does take money to do that. I always say that if you want to make money in this business, it always takes money to make money. And especially when you start getting into the sponsor ads and things like this, this is something that it's a trial and error, a lot of testing, a lot of research, going through Jungle Scout, Merchant Words, and those type of things. And the other ones that Brian mentioned as well are going to help you. The tools are out there that will help you, but you have to do a lot of the legwork as far as finding out what keywords will work for you and what keywords that are being searched for your product by your consumers. It does take time and it does take effort to do it. You put the time in, you put the effort in, and you will be successful. But you have to put the time and effort in, and you got to be willing to do the work. And I think Brian will agree with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So again, Brian, thanks you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful holiday and Christmas, and I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here tonight with us. We do appreciate it, and God bless you, and God bless everyone here on the call. And I usually give my guests the last word, Brian, so I'm gonna let you carry us out.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I really appreciate being here, and it's been a pleasure. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your questions and your feedback. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Thanks, Brian. Take care.